Good day and welcome to another masterclass session with PSG Wealth through 21. Today in the studio we have Albert Coetzee from 91. Albert is the head of global for 91's investment platform. And what we're looking to address today is we just want to unpack some offshore investment options when it comes to the platform and the investment vehicles you have available to invest through when you plan on taking funds offshore. And obviously being in South African, with all the dynamics and all the risk involved in South Africa, I think that it's very topical and it's very relevant at the moment, just to know and be aware of the options that you have available when taking funds offshore. So Albert, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary.
It's always a privilege to enjoy all the information that you provide us from 91 side. So Albert, let's just jump right into it. So the platforms available to clients taking funds offshore. Today we're going to talk about the 91 Global Life portfolio as well as the 91 Global Investment portfolio. And also I think the idea is to unpack all the benefits, but also some of the technical details. And ultimately, we want our clients to understand who should invest in which one of these portfolios. Which one is better for what type of client and the reasons for that. So maybe we can start with that, Albert, just between the two, what type of client benefits from these investments?
Gary, I think the first step for a client is, and obviously that is your job, is for the client to decide, I'm taking my money out of the country. I think that is very important here. We're not talking about asset swap or feeder funds. The client to take the money out of the country, he has three ways of taking it out of the country. He can either take out his annual R1 million allowance. He can take out his annual 10 million allowance. Now, very important, that annual is from the 1st of January till the end of December. So it's not tax years, it's calendar years.
Okay, that's
Then thirdly is people maybe with more than the 11 million per year, they take special clearance. But I think the discussion about the client taking the money out of the country is a discussion you have with them or your advisors have with them to say, like, do I diversify out of South Africa, which you said earlier? Do I diversify away from the South African market? Do I diversify away from the currency, the rand, for example? And some people say that is the one category of client. Some other client says, you know what, I maybe going to plan to leave the country. I maybe have expenses, etc., to pay overseas, or maybe I potentially planning to retire or live overseas. Now that is some of the main reasons where people then physically take the money out of the country.
Or for instance, you want your children to be
education
offshore.
Get it very often. Now the money is out of the country. In the old days, people would have then invested directly into a share portfolio. Now we find with situs tax, with probate, with stuff illiquidity on death, all of those things, I find that people are starting to move away from that. In the old days, they used to go to a unit trust overseas and invest directly into the unit trust. Mainly, the issues around that is now what we experience is, since grey listing, it's very cumbersome to deal with that. The annual anti-money laundering requirements is quite tough on the client and on you as a firm. So I almost say that's old school now. That's why a product or a vehicle like the 91 Global Investment Portfolio is topical. It is a flexible plan. I own it. There's no term to it. I can put the money in today. I can take it out tomorrow. But the difference between that and maybe investing in direct unit trust from direct different mancos is you don't complete 6 application forms. You complete 1 application form. What's nice here, because of grey listing, everything is online. So there's no hard copy paper, PDFs, back and forth couriering and all those things. And then with 91, you get one statement, maybe with 6 different funds, PSG funds in there. And then when you do transactional switch, whatever, you do it online. And later you can switch from one fund to another, for example. And as I said earlier, because the money is physically overseas, it stays overseas until you decide, let's redeem it and bring it back into my South African bank account.
So just in summary, Albert, so it's an offshore investment platform, and this thing gives you the ability to break down your underlying investments with regards to the underlying funds, to diversify and switch and manage the actual underlying investment in this platform. Am I correct?
Correct. So you own the unit. Now, because you own the unit, we only allow you there to invest in unit trust into this vehicle, the 91 Global Investment Portfolio, not direct shares, because that would mean I would own the underlying share, which means on death, I, for example, will be exposed to CITES tax. But this product makes use of a South African nominee structure, which is very nice, because if I have it, for example, and I pass away, and Gary, my advisor, is my beneficiary, there's no probate. So there's never a probate. And remember, for the audience, probate is not a tax. Probate is quite lengthy and can be quite expensive, which is the sort of the process in the jurisdiction of the investment to valid sort of the deceased, valid the will, valid the beneficiaries, and that normally you work with a law firm in that jurisdiction and you throw it through that jurisdiction's courts. So you try to avoid it. So I think one of the best things in this product is, regardless who's my beneficiary, there is no probate.
Yeah.
One of the negative things of this product, though, which I sort of highlight, and currently we take about 20% of our flows into overseas into this product, is this product is guarded by my will. Now, if I'm South Africa, I live in South Africa, I pay tax in South Africa, touch wood, I'm going to die in South Africa, I have to indicate to 91 my beneficiary, Gary, via my will. Now, as we know currently, wills equals the master's office, equals potential delays, equals executor, equal executor's fees. So I would say the biggest drawback on this investment is it has to be guarded on my death via my will, and that can be a lengthy process.
Albert, then just on this, so where is this product domiciled?
It's a foreign product, but we make use of a South African nominee structure. Why we say that is one of the reasons, for example, where no probate applies. That is, for example, why my South African will apply. People say, my money is overseas now. Do I need an overseas will, for example? You don't have to. If you are South African tax resident, for example, your South African will is sufficient.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Correct, okay. And then, with regards to liquidity, you mentioned liquidity a bit.
Complete.
Earlier. So there's full liquidity on the funds, there's no investment term on the investment portfolio. Can you withdraw funds in a offshore bank account when you want to liquidate?
Yeah, you can, because the money is overseas. When you complete the application form, you can say my bank account is X, Y, and Z in London. And one day when you redeem, for example, we'll pay to that account. Because the money was taken out via your allowances, your million rand, your 10 million, that money is overseas now. So once the money is overseas, you can do with whatever you want. If you redeem one day, you can redeem it to an overseas bank account. For example, we're not required that you have to pay it back to South Africa one day.
Okay, so obviously it's a great vehicle to use when sending funds offshore and you invest it directly in US dollars in the offshore markets. With this investment platform, however, when the client passes away, it still falls within his
South African
estate, and the succession is governed by what he writes in his will.
Correct, yeah.
And it also will pass through his estate, so part of what the executors of his South African estate will handle. Am I right?
Yeah. So interesting, this product is because of the Administration of Estates Act being involved on death. This product cannot say, I have it today, let's pay the proceeds to my son Gary's bank account when I die. Because the Administration of Estates Act does not allow third-party payments. So on my death, there's two options. So either the executor will tell 91, pay the proceeds, redeem, incur capital gain, and redeem this to my Albert's South African estate-led bank account, or in the will, I've nominated my son by name. So 91 can then say, let's transfer the unit from Albert the father to Gary the son. So the money doesn't have to come back to South Africa.
Okay.
Now, because it's Albert to father to son, it's a capital gains tax event. So it can be Albert to spouse, it's capital gain neutral. But I think the very important point here is that clients don't think on my DEF the money has to be paid to South Africa. It's an option, but you can also say, Gary can the next day say, here's an application form, and 91 can transfer the units from the deceased father, Albert, to the new son, new owner, Gary's name.
Okay. Albert, thank you. So fantastic vehicle to use for offshore investments, and then
easy, flexible, online.
Easy, flexible,
liquid.
Online, liquid, and a lot of investments underneath that you can
invest in, except shares because of Citus tax. Now, for the audience, maybe what is Citus tax? Citus tax is if I own a share, a direct share, and the register of that share is potentially held in the US or the UK. Citus tax in the US and the UK, there's one or two exemptions, can be as high as 40%. Where in South Africa, estate duty is between 20 and 25%. So ideally, you try to avoid Citus tax.
Correct. And then Albert, if you can just touch on the global life portfolio, which is a bit different. There's a few things that differs to the investment portfolio. If you can just unpack that, and also what the benefits would be, and then just taking it back to what type of client would benefit from rather investing in this structure.
Yeah, I'm very proud of this product. I think this product is one of the front runners in the industry, in my view. The Global Life Portfolio is a global sinking fund. It's a 5-year sinking fund policy wrapper. Now, very important, I use the word a policy wrapper because it can split between an endowment and a sinking fund. We have a sinking fund. If more details required, I can always sort of go into that. But I think this takes about 80% of our flows. Why this is so popular? Because the exact negative I mentioned on the previous product about on-death, succession, will, master office, executor fees, this product takes that away. Because this product allows you to nominate beneficiaries. Now, yes, it's a 5-year investment. Sort of don't let that scare you off. You can open more than one. During the first 5 years, you have one loan, interest-free, which is a withdrawal with the option to pay back. It's not a loan with interest. You're not borrowing against, or you have a withdrawal. So there's plenty of liquidity in my view. But very important also, after 5 years, there's actually no term to it. On death, very important for elderly people. I would say maybe definitely elderly people here. On death, the term falls away. On paper, there's supposed to be 30% income tax and 12% capital gains tax. But because every single fund inside this product is a roll-up fund, which means even money market, when the fund declares, it rolls into the price. So there's absolutely no tax. And so normally in South Africa, they have a similar version. People say, I would only go in here if my tax rate is higher than 30. Now, because there's no income tax, for example, in the previous product we didn't touch on, the previous product we get tax in my own hands. But here you get tax on inside this investment on behalf of, so there's also now IT3Bs and Cs on an annual basis.
So all income tax rolls up into capital.
So it's zero, and the capital gain inside is at 12%, where normally my capital gain in my own hands can be as high as 18%, and I have to submit the IT3C every year to SARS, which here, for example, is not necessary. So this product is inside very tax friendly. Because it's tax friendly, there's no IT3B certificates to submit. But I think the benefit of this product here for me comes into on death, because the succession from me to my son Gary is a lot faster because the beneficiary is nominated. And because the beneficiary is nominated, you cut out the master's office, the executor involvement, and also executor's fees, a touch wood. And it can literally roll, assuming I have put the son Gary's name as a beneficiary on the application form. You mustn't put estate, and you must not have it blank, because then you form part of the will and the whole process starts.
But just on a technical point, so the beneficiaries, do you get beneficiaries of proceeds and also beneficiaries of ownership? How does that work? And also, when the funds on death transfer to a beneficiary, what is the capital gains impact on that?
Very good question.
You've mentioned that it doesn't go into your estate, it goes directly to the
beneficiaries.
It will be a deemed asset in the
deceased
estate, but
Yeah.
what happens with the CGT
Yeah.
when transferring to the beneficiary?
Very good point. Because it's a sinking fund, you don't have beneficiary for ownership and beneficiary for proceeds. That's an endowment discussion.
Okay.
Now here, 91, I would say compared to some of the competitors out there, if I'm the father and I, for example, have 3 children, the first thing with 91, which is very important, is when the father, for example, passed away, each child will get his own third of the investment. So in some competitors, all 3 children inherit together, which in my view, you should never inherit together.
So just to be clear on that, so what would happen is the investment would essentially break up into 3/3 and each child will inherit individual investment to do with as he likes. You won't have a share in one.
Yeah, a share in one of mean if I want to switch tomorrow, Gary has to sign and my other brother have to sign. If I redeem today, I incur a capital gain for my brother and for my brother, for example. Now on death, because the policy splits into 3, it's a capital gain rollover. And it's not only a capital gain rollover between me and my spouse, it's also between me and whoever I nominate as beneficiary, which is not the case in the previous product we discussed. So that's a huge benefit. And remember always on this investment, that's why maybe for elderly clients is the term. If I, remember I initially a 5-year term, but if I do it on Monday and I die the next Monday, the 5-year term falls away. Then we look to say who's the beneficiaries, the 3 brothers. Each brother gets their mature policy. And the next day, Gary can say, thank you very much, I'm out of here, I cash in. But your cash in does not affect the other 2 brothers, which inherited separately. What this product further do, which I think is very important, which we've seen during COVID, which is vital. Now, say for example, I have one. I've nominated my wife, Susan, as the beneficiary. I pass away, but Susan is already dead. Or me and Susan pass away at the same time. That whole lot of money must come back to my estate in South Africa. So what this product also do, which is extremely important, this product has a thing called alternative beneficiary, which I highly recommend. Say Albert owns, wife or spouse is the beneficiary, our son Gary is the alternative beneficiary, who has no right. He only kicks in when my death and mother is not there. Then you become the owner.
Which I think it's a huge benefit in a family setup.
Very important.
Just another technical question, Albert, can you make an offshore trust a beneficiary of this?
Yes, offshore trust, there's various types of offshore trust. You have a full-blown offshore trust today. Watch out, they're expensive. So you need a lot of money to justify an offshore trust. Another alternative to an offshore trust is a thing called a freezer trust, a dry trust, a bottom drawer trust. That's a trust I set up today. There's nothing in it, so it's quite cheap. But what I find sometimes with younger clients, maybe their children are minors, maybe the children want to definitely keep the money overseas, to study overseas. So what you sometimes find, I'm the owner, a dry or freezer trust is the beneficiary. But I got a spouse. Maybe I'm the owner, my wife is the beneficiary, and then the alternative is the freezer trust. So the freezer trust will only kick in on my and my wife's death at the same time, or when I die, she's not there. Or maybe 10 years from now, I'm still alive, my wife is still alive, the children are now majors, and you close the freezer trust.
Yeah.
But it's a nice safety net to prevent that money to come back to South Africa on my death.
And it's also cost effective way, as you mentioned, it's not a trust that is really active in the meantime. It's actually a trust at a very low cost,
which converts.
With a very specific goal in the future.
Yeah. I sometimes look at it like insurance. I pay insurance every month. I may or may not need it, but it's sort of a security in case something happens. Now, I look at a freezer trust sometimes as insurance. In case something happens, it's there. It will convert. It will take over. It will look after my children. The trust can take over this investment, capital gain tax neutral, and the children can study overseas. But maybe one day, if my children are still alive, I'm still alive, you can also close the trust because you don't need it.
Yes. So there you have it, Albert. Thank you very much for providing us with this valuable information. It's very insightful, and just from a client perspective, I think it's important to realize it's easy nowadays with the sophisticated financial system to get offshore exposure and to invest offshore. But there are specific nuances and rules and regulations and tax that you need to pay specific attention to, and sometimes it's really important once you make that decision to look at the top structure that's going to hold your investments and what benefits that can provide you, especially in the long term. Because once you take out funds offshore, it's generally a long-term decision, and it's really got a lot of implications with regards to the things that we've discussed. Obviously, this video is rather short, and some of these things are technical, and we can't unpack everything. But I think this was a fantastic opportunity, Albert, just to provide a bit of an oversight. And if it's something that you'd like to discuss in more detail, please reach out to us, and we'll gladly sit down and we can have a personal discussion and see what is the most applicable investment vehicle for your specific situation and your specific family structure, etc. Thank you very much for joining us. Please reach out if you'd like to have a personal discussion. Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Gary. Dankie.